There are moments, seemingly harmless, when we scroll past a picture on social media, hear about a friend's success, or witness someone being praised in public. Almost instantly, a quiet yet powerful voice arises within us. Comparison. The mind begins to measure, to analyze, and soon after, feelings of unease, or even envy, start to emerge. These are the subtle expressions of the ego, a part of us that is constantly seeking nourishment through comparison with others. The title of today's reflection, The Subtle Ways Ego Feeds on Comparison and Envy, opens the door for us to look closely at the hidden mechanisms of the ego. Unlike obvious cravings or blatant arrogance, comparison and envy often slip into our most ordinary moments, so subtle that we barely notice them. They are like wisps of smoke, seemingly invisible, yet powerful enough to cloud and weigh down the whole atmosphere of the heart. On this inner journey that the Dharma journey invites us to take, the aim is not to condemn or judge the ego, but to learn how to recognize it. For only when we truly see that the ego is being fed by comparison and envy, can we begin to loosen the grip of that endless cycle. The cycle that keeps us feeling inadequate, never enough, always behind. In the United States, as in much of the modern world, we live under the constant pressure of comparison culture. Success is often measured by income. Self-worth is validated by achievement. Happiness is portrayed as something that must look a certain way, shaped and polished for public display. Within this environment, the ego finds abundant fuel, because comparison and envy are its richest soil. And yet, when we return to silence, when we breathe in and breathe out mindfully, we begin to see that all these races are illusions. What the Dharma journey wishes to share in this video is not a rigid lecture, but an invitation to pause, to notice the moments when we get pulled into comparison, and to listen carefully to the feelings of envy within us. Do not rush to suppress them or to cover them up. Simply observe. For in the gentle, honest recognition of their presence, the ego begins to lose its power. And we realize that at the root of comparison lies a deeper fear, the fear of not being enough. But that fear itself is nothing more than a story the ego keeps telling us. When we open ourselves to this truth, something profound happens. By refusing to feed the ego with comparison and envy, we feel lighter, freer. We stop running in races that were never ours to begin with. We begin to nurture the authentic value within us. Joy no longer comes from outshining or surpassing others, but from the quiet peace of living true to ourselves. In this video, the Dharma journey will walk with you into this exploration, uncovering how the ego subtly feeds on comparison and envy, recognizing the patterns that usually go unnoticed, and practicing simple yet profound steps to free ourselves from this invisible grip. This is not just a lesson in psychology or philosophy. It is an experience of living, a path for anyone who longs for a life of authenticity, freedom, and compassion. So let us sit together, open our hearts, and listen deeply. For when we dare to look directly at the ways the ego sustains itself, we also discover the path to release it. And that path, that journey, is what the Dharma journey is here to share with you. Picture this. It's a regular morning. You wake up, grab your phone, and start scrolling through social media like you always do. Suddenly, a photo pops up. An old friend smiling brightly on a trip through Europe, surrounded by stunning views with hundreds of likes beneath the post. What's the very first feeling that arises in you? Maybe admiration for a moment, but then another voice creeps in. Why do they have that life while I don't? What am I even doing with mine? And just like that, even though no one has hurt you, a wave of jealousy, insecurity, or heaviness shows up. You ask yourself, why do I feel this way? They didn't take anything from me, so why am I suffering just by looking at their joy? This is exactly how the ego quietly works behind the scenes. It doesn't need an enemy outside. because the real enemy lives inside our own mind. In today's world, especially in the West, where social media is woven into daily life, comparison has become almost automatic. We see others looking happier, richer, more successful, and immediately our mind creates a silent scoreboard. The ego whispers, "They have more, you have less. They are worthy, you are not enough." And from that whisper, suffering is born. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering is attachment to self, this strong grip on the idea of me that constantly needs to be protected, polished, and validated. When this fragile self feels threatened, envy and pain naturally arise. We don't suffer because of reality itself, but because of the illusion that ego projects onto it. Look deeper. That friend on social media simply shared a joyful moment. They didn't take anything away from you. Yet the ego turned their happiness into a mirror. And in that mirror, you saw your own perceived lack. The bigger the ego, the sharper the comparison. And comparison always breeds dissatisfaction. But here's the shift. In the very same situation, if you let go of the ego's grip, your heart could feel completely different. Instead of jealousy, you might feel joy for them. How wonderful that my friend is having such an experience. Compassion arises, and ego steps aside. That's the difference between living trapped in the self and living with an open heart. In America, many grow up in a culture of competition. Study hard to get into the best schools, work harder to climb the career ladder, chase the American dream. But beneath all of that is a constant cycle of comparison. Who's ahead? Who earns more? Who gets more attention? And in this endless race, the ego is always demanding proof of its worth. No wonder insecurity feels like a modern epidemic. Buddhism doesn't reject success, but it reminds us that no matter how much success we achieve, it cannot cure the restlessness within. As long as the ego remains unrecognized, it will keep finding new reasons to be dissatisfied. Today it envies someone's vacation. Tomorrow it resents a coworker's promotion. If we don't pause, the ego will turn life into a never-ending competition, where the prize at the end is nothing but exhaustion and emptiness. So the real question is, can we step out of this game of comparison? The answer is yes, but not by proving we're better than others. The freedom comes from seeing how the ego works and gently letting go of it. When the Buddha taught the path beyond suffering, he wasn't teaching how to outshine anyone else. He was showing us how to see clearly that all these comparisons are illusions, and that the self we cling to is not as solid as we think. Only then can the heart rest in freedom, no longer controlled by social media, status, or the eyes of others. So next time you pick up your phone and see someone shining brightly, pause for a breath. Ask yourself, where is this feeling coming from? Is it truly real, or just the echo of ego? That simple question may be the beginning of a greater freedom. The freedom from comparison, from insecurity, and most importantly, from the narrow cage of the ego itself. The ego is a subtle structure of the mind. It survives by drawing a line between me and others. It convinces us that we are a separate, independent self that must be protected, praised, and constantly validated. The moment the idea of I arises, so does the idea of not I. And in that division, suffering finds fertile ground. But ego cannot survive in silence. It needs constant fuel, and that fuel is comparison. The ego whispers, am I better? Am I worse? Am I special? These three questions are its daily bread. When you feel better than someone else, ego swells with pride. But that pride is fragile, because the moment you meet someone more talented, ego shrinks into inferiority. When you feel worse, ego feeds you jealousy, shame, and the sense of not being enough. And when you feel special, ego plants the seeds of arrogance, the illusion that you are above others, that you are separate, untouchable, In the West, especially in America, comparison is almost woven into culture. From childhood, we compare grades in school, athletic ability, appearance, career success, and even the number of followers on social media. Society silently rewards this behavior. The student with an A is successful. The student with a C feels less. The employee promoted is celebrated, while the one left behind struggles with self-doubt. Life becomes a scoreboard, and ego is the one keeping score. From the Buddhist perspective, this endless cycle is the very root of suffering. Why? Because the more we cling to self, the further we drift from our true nature, one that is not divided at all. The Buddha taught that all things are without a fixed self, but ego insists the opposite. I am real. I am different. I must be measured against others. The problem is, this game never ends. There will always be someone wealthier, smarter, more attractive, and always someone less fortunate. Ego will forever swing between arrogance and inferiority, never resting in peace. Both states are unstable, and neither brings true happiness. The truth is, your worth cannot be measured by any external scale. Your real value is not in the money you earn or the recognition you gain. It lies in your ability to live with awareness, to love, to let go. Ego will never understand this, because it only knows how to compare and compete. If you pause and look deeper, you'll see that ego is just a mental habit, a collection of memories, thoughts, and identifications. It's like a shadow. The more you chase it, the bigger it looms. But the moment you turn and face it, it disappears. When we see ego for what it is, comparison begins to lose its grip. Think of a flower. A flower never asks itself if it's prettier than another flower. It simply blooms, expressing its nature fully. Only humans, led by ego, feel the need to constantly prove themselves, to measure against others. And in that constant measuring, we lose the ability to truly live the present moment. The Buddha taught that a wise person does not chase after being greater or lesser, but instead looks deeply to see the truth of no self. When you recognize this truth, comparison becomes meaningless. Instead of asking, "Am I better or worse?" you begin to ask, "Am I living with awareness and joy right now?" Seen through the eyes of ego, life will always present reasons for dissatisfaction. But seen through the eyes of compassion, the happiness of others can become your own joy, and your heart rests in peace. This is the path out of the prison of comparison, not by looking outward for validation, but by turning inward to discover the spaciousness that has always been there. On the surface, comparison seems natural. Almost everyone is asked at some point, "Am I as good as them? Am I better? Am I worse?" But behind this simple act lies a hidden trap. Whether you believe you're less than others or greater than them, both roads lead to suffering. When you think you are less, the mind immediately falls into inferiority. You feel inadequate, unworthy, somehow incomplete. From that wound grows quiet insecurity, which makes it difficult to enjoy your own life. A friend's success feels like a reminder of your failures. Another person's happiness feels like a loss for you. With every comparison, you sink deeper into self-doubt. On the other hand, when you think you are better, the ego rises with pride. You feel superior, special, untouchable. But this sense of pride is like standing on a shaky chair. One day, someone taller appears, and suddenly the chair collapses. Arrogance creates separation. It isolates you from others because deep down, you've placed yourself above them. Both states, inferiority and arrogance, are two sides of the same coin, ego, and neither brings true happiness. Happiness cannot be built on the feeling of being better than someone else, nor can it exist inside the shadow of feeling less. True happiness only arises when the mind is free from measuring, when it sees life without the scale of winning and losing. The Buddha once taught, "In this world, no one is truly greater, No one is truly lesser, and no one is exactly equal. Every person is a unique journey, shaped by causes, conditions, and experiences. Comparing yourself to others is like comparing a lotus to a daisy. Each flower has its own beauty, and it blooms fully only when it stays true to its nature. If we let the ego rule, life becomes an endless battle. On one side shame, on the other side pride. But if we look with wisdom, we realize there is nothing to compare. Someone else's joy can make us smile with them. Our own small steps forward can be celebrated with gratitude. In that simplicity, peace begins to grow. In modern America, the pressure to compare feels even stronger. From income, houses, and cars, to likes and followers online, everything becomes an invisible scoreboard. Yet the more we chase those numbers, the further we drift from ourselves. Because in the end, there will always be someone richer, more successful, more attractive. If comparison is your measure, you'll never find rest. Only by turning inward can we see the truth. Our worth is not defined by being better or worse. It lies in our awareness, our ability to live fully in this moment, and the love we are able to give. Like a drop of water in the ocean, it doesn't need to prove itself larger or smaller than any other drop. The moment it returns to the sea, it is infinite. In the same way, when we let go of comparison, we merge back into the vastness of life itself, beyond the boundaries of better and worse. So the next time you notice your mind comparing, pause and smile. Remind yourself, this road does not lead to peace. In that very moment, you step out of the ego's game and into the field of freedom, where true happiness finally has space to arise. The hidden danger of envy. Envy is like a fire that burns quietly inside the heart. At first, it may feel small, just a flicker when we see someone else achieve something we wish we had. But left unattended, it grows. It feeds on comparison, on the constant thought of, why them and not me? And soon, it colors the way we see ourselves, the way we see others, and even the way we experience life. When we feel envy, the mind is never at peace. Even if life is going well, even if we have more than enough, envy whispers, it's not enough. You should have more. You deserve better. This is why envy is so dangerous. It doesn't just make us feel lacking. It blinds us to the blessings already in our hands. In Buddhist wisdom, it is often said that envy and jealousy are poisons of the mind. They do not harm the one we envy. They only poison our own heart. When the Buddha taught about the roots of suffering, he often pointed to craving and aversion. Envy is a mixture of both. It is craving for what others have, and aversion toward our own life as it is. Think about it. Has envy ever made you truly happy? When we see someone else succeed and feel bitter inside, does that bring us joy? Of course not. Instead, we become restless, anxious, and unsatisfied. We may even begin to resent people who have done nothing wrong to us, simply because they are shining in ways we wish we could. In this way, envy isolates us. It cuts us off from connection, from compassion, and from genuine joy. The Buddha's teaching is clear. To envy the happiness or success of another is to create suffering for oneself. It is like drinking poison and hoping the other person will suffer. The truth is, they may continue to thrive, while we remain trapped in our own dissatisfaction. But there is another way. Instead of letting envy consume us, we can practice mudita, sympathetic joy, or rejoicing in the happiness of others. This is the direct antidote to envy. When someone else succeeds, instead of thinking, why them? We can learn to think, may they continue to be blessed, may their happiness grow. At first, it may feel difficult. The ego resists. But with practice, this shift transforms the heart. It replaces bitterness with warmth, tension with peace, and scarcity with abundance. Envy thrives on the illusion that happiness is limited, as if another's joy takes away from our own. But this is not true. Happiness is not a pie that gets smaller when others take a slice. It is a boundless field, and the more we celebrate others, the more room we create for joy in our own hearts. The danger of envy is not just in the suffering it brings. It is in the way it blinds us from seeing life clearly. It makes us believe we are empty when in truth, we already carry fullness within. By recognizing envy for what it is, a trick of the ego, we can begin to loosen its grip. So next time envy arises, pause. Instead of feeding it, breathe deeply and remind yourself, their joy does not diminish mine. Their success is not my failure. In that moment, you plant the seed of freedom. You choose peace over poison. And as the Buddha once reminded us, hatred does not cease by hatred. Only love ceases hatred. In the same way, envy does not end by fighting it with anger or shame. It ends when we replace it with love, with compassion, and with the joy of knowing that happiness multiplies when it is shared. The ego in the age of social media. In today's world, social media has become like a giant mirror. Every day we look into it, comparing our reflection with everyone else's. We post a picture, then wait for the likes, the views, the comments, and the followers to tell us that we matter. Yet deep down, those numbers are nothing more than shadows. They don't define our true worth. The ego, however, thrives in this environment. It whispers constantly, "You need more. You're not enough. Look at them. They're better than you. You must prove yourself." And so, social media becomes fertile soil for the ego to grow, feeding on endless comparison. When someone else succeeds, we feel inferior. When someone stumbles, we feel secretly relieved. All of this comes not from the heart, but from the restless hunger of the ego. The danger is that the more we get caught in this cycle, the further we drift from peace. One moment, we're elated because our post gets attention. The next, we're disappointed when no one notices. Our emotions rise and fall like a leaf tossed in the wind, rootless, unstable, dependent on things we cannot control. Buddha taught that true happiness cannot be found outside of us. It can only arise from inner awareness and wisdom. But when we identify with our online image, we hand the reins of our life to the ego. And the ego never knows satisfaction. It always creates more thirst. Thirst for recognition, thirst for attention, thirst for praise. The more we chase, the more empty we feel. Sometimes we spend hours perfecting a single photo, hoping for approval, yet inside we feel hollow. Sometimes we compare our lives to the polished images we see online, forgetting that they are carefully curated illusions. In this way, social media doesn't just feed the ego, it deepens our suffering. So how do we step free? The Dharma points to mindfulness, to see clearly that likes are not a measure of our value. To realize that truth does not lie in a filtered photo, but in this very breath, in the simple beauty of being alive right now. Mindfulness shows us that the ego is only an illusion. The more we feed it, the more restless we become. But when we return to stillness within, we discover that we are already whole. We don't need more followers. We don't need more validation. Peace and completeness are already here, waiting in the quiet of the heart. Social media itself is not the enemy. It is simply a tool. If we are unconscious, it becomes a net that entangles us. But if we use it with awareness, it can be a field where we plant seeds of kindness, compassion, and true connection. In the end, the worth of a human being is not found in likes or followers. It is found in the love we give, in the mindfulness we nurture, and in the peace we carry inside. When we remember this, the ego softens and peace naturally blooms. even in the noisy, restless world of social media, seeing through the illusion of comparison. In life, we often get caught in the endless cycle of comparison. When we see someone succeed, a voice inside whispers, "Why do they have that and I don't?" When we see others happy, we begin to feel our own lives are lacking. Even when we have more than others, the mind still finds no peace, afraid of being surpassed or losing what it clings to. But the Buddha taught that no two journeys are ever the same. Each of us is born with different conditions, karma, and lessons to learn. To compare yourself to another is like using someone else's map to walk your own path. It will never truly fit. Every person carries joys, struggles, and blessings that only they can understand. When we compare, we are really denying the value of our own unique path. The ego loves to trick us into believing there is some universal standard of success, beauty, or happiness. It whispers, "Look at them. They're better, richer, more talented. You're not enough." And when we believe that voice, we cut ourselves off from our own inner peace. The truth is, comparison is just an illusion. Life is impermanent, constantly changing, flowing from one moment to the next. Someone who stands high today may fall tomorrow. Someone struggling now may discover great peace tomorrow. When we compare, we only measure against a single fleeting moment in another person's story. It's like judging a painting before the artist has even finished. Buddhist wisdom invites us to shift the question. Instead of asking, "Why am I not like them?" we can ask, "What is my path teaching me right now? What lessons are hidden in my challenges?" In this way, comparison dissolves, and gratitude and understanding begin to grow. Think of it like this. The one walking up the mountain faces rocks and steep cliffs, while the one traveling by the sea faces waves and salt. Both paths are real, both are beautiful, and neither needs to be like the other. We do not need to live someone else's journey. We only need to walk our own with awareness. Through mindfulness, this truth becomes clear. When we pause and take a mindful breath, we realize we don't need to be like anyone else. Each breath is already a miracle. Each mindful step is already unique in the vastness of existence. When we see this, the need to compare falls away, replaced by a quiet smile and a sense of completeness. Because in the end, comparison never brings happiness. It only feeds restlessness and suffering. But awareness brings us home, to the present moment, to the enoughness that has always been within us. And that is the true freedom the Buddha revealed, a freedom available to all who dare to let go of the illusion of comparison, transforming comparison into inspiration. In life, we all fall into the trap of comparison. We see someone who is more talented, wealthier, or seemingly happier, and envy quietly rises within us. When others receive praise, we may feel unsettled, asking ourselves, "Why not me?" This is the voice of the ego, feeding itself through endless comparison. But the Buddha taught that every seed in the mind can be transformed. Even comparison, if seen clearly, can become a force for growth. The key is simple. Instead of envy, practice learning. Instead of thinking, "They are better than me," try asking, "What can I learn from them?" Envy makes the heart heavy, clouded by resentment and a sense of lack. But when we shift to learning, that same energy becomes inspiration, fueling us to move forward on our own path. We are no longer trapped between inferiority and arrogance. We are grateful for the chance to witness others as teachers in disguise. Think of a garden. A rose blossoms in its own brilliance, a lotus in its purity, and a daisy in its simplicity. None of them compete or envy one another. Their differences make the garden beautiful. People are the same. Others shine in their way, and we can learn from them while discovering our own light. In today's world of social media, it's easy to get lost in the race for likes and views. Someone else's success can trigger jealousy. Yet if we turn the mind in a new direction, each moment of comparison becomes a valuable lesson. How did this person persevere? What qualities helped them grow? What can I practice in my own life? In this way, comparison shifts from being a chain that binds us to becoming wings that lift us. In Buddhism, this is the transformation of the ego. The ego thrives on measuring up and competing. But when illuminated by mindfulness, that same tendency can become the energy that pushes us to practice, to awaken. Instead of drowning in envy, we ride the wave and let it carry our boat toward wisdom. The next time you see someone succeed, silently offer them well wishes. May they continue to enjoy happiness. Then remind yourself, I also have my path, and I too have seeds to nurture. With this, the mind opens. Comparison no longer imprisons us, but becomes a doorway to inspiration and compassion. In that very shift, comparison transforms from suffering into awakening, and we see clearly, life is not a race to outshine one another, but a journey where each of us finds our own true light. Cultivating joy, mudita. In Buddhist teachings, there are the four immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Among them, joy, or mudita, is often less spoken of than compassion. Yet, it is a precious gem on the path of practice. Mudita means genuine joy, not self-centered pleasure, but the happiness we feel when others find success, peace, or fulfillment. In daily life, however, it is so easy to fall into the opposite state, envy. When we see someone gaining wealth, recognition, or love, the ego often whispers, "Why do they have it and not me?" That comparison turns another's happiness into our own suffering. And in that moment, we are the ones who bleed inside. But when we cultivate joy in the happiness of others, their success becomes nourishment for our own hearts. When we witness a friend's promotion, we can rejoice as if life has gifted us as well. When we see someone thriving, we allow their light to warm us too. This attitude not only protects us from the flames of jealousy, but also opens our hearts, making our journey through life lighter and more graceful. Imagine one candle lighting another. Its flame is not diminished. Instead, light multiplies. In the same way, when we rejoice in others' good fortune, the brightness in our hearts expands. When envy takes hold, however, it casts a shadow that suffocates our inner peace. In today's world, with social media exposing us to endless displays of success and happiness, envy has many chances to arise. We scroll, we compare, and silently we suffer. Yet mudita is the medicine. Instead of thinking, "They are better than me," we can whisper within, "May their happiness continue." This small shift in attitude can completely change the inner landscape of the heart. The Buddha taught that whenever we give rise to joy for others, we plant seeds of blessing in ourselves. That joy does not belong only to them. It becomes a healing energy for us. It soothes the wounds of comparison, dissolves bitterness, and nurtures a deep, quiet peace. Mudita is like a fresh spring. When the heart is dry and cracked from jealousy, this spring waters it, softens it, and allows it to bloom again. And here we learn a profound truth. Happiness is never a private possession. It is always something that can be shared, something that multiplies when given away. By practicing mudita, we free ourselves from the chains of endless competition. We begin to walk with lighter steps, and we also contribute to a kinder world. A person who radiates joy naturally spreads joy to others. Like ripples on water, this energy expands outward endlessly. Of course, cultivating mudita is not always easy, but like any practice, it begins with small steps. Start by smiling when others are happy. Offer a silent blessing when you see someone succeed. Over time, the heart opens, and joy flows naturally. Then we begin to see the Buddha's wisdom. True happiness does not come from grasping for ourselves, but from rejoicing in others. Practicing mindfulness. When comparison arises. In daily life, comparison is one of the ego's most subtle habits. When we see someone succeed, the mind whispers, "Why do they have that and I don't?" When we see someone in love, another voice quietly asks, "What am I missing?" These thoughts appear almost instantly, like sparks that flare before we even notice. But here lies a golden opportunity. Through mindful awareness, we can step out of the ego's grip and find freedom. The first step is recognition. When comparison arises, pause for a moment and gently smile. This is the ego at work. By naming it, you are already taking one step back, no longer completely controlled by it. Imagine it like an unexpected guest knocking on your door. You don't need to chase it away, but you also don't have to invite it in. Just acknowledge its presence and return to yourself. Then, simply return to the breath. Each mindful breath is like a cool stream of water washing away the heat of envy, insecurity, or discontent. Instead of following the comparing thoughts, bring your awareness to your body. Feel the chest rising and falling. Notice the breath moving in and out through the nose. Within just a few breaths, the storm begins to settle, and the mind becomes clear, like a calm lake after ripples fade. From this place of calm, you can begin to shift the habit. Compare less. Cultivate gratitude more. Each time comparison shows up, ask yourself, instead of comparing, what can I be grateful for right now? It could be as simple as a warm meal, a healthy body, or just the miracle of breathing. Gratitude doesn't diminish anyone else's joy, but it always expands your own. The Buddha taught that the ego thrives on division. Better or worse, higher or lower, beautiful or ugly. Wisdom, however, sees that every path is unique. The tree on the roadside never tries to outshine the mountain. It simply grows in its own way. The small bird does not envy the eagle. It sings its own song at dawn, bringing joy in its own measure. In the same way, every human life has its timing, its lessons, its moment to bloom. Comparison only exhausts us, while mindfulness restores our peace. In today's world, where social media constantly fuels comparison, mindfulness is more essential than ever. As we scroll through images of polished lives, instead of letting the ego whisper, "I'm not enough," we can pause, breathe, and smile. This is my chance to come back to myself. One pause at a time, we build the inner strength to remain free. Over time, this practice forms a new habit, no longer being pulled into the trap of comparison, but resting in gratitude. As this habit grows stronger, the heart opens wider and the mind rests easier, no longer shaken by the storm of wanting to measure ourselves against others. Mindfulness doesn't mean comparison will never appear again. It means that each time it does, it becomes a doorway to awakening. Instead of letting it wound us, we can use it to deepen awareness. When the ego whispers, we smile. When envy arises, we transform it into thankfulness. Each comparison then becomes not a burden, but a stepping stone on the path to freedom. Only when we truly see the workings of the ego can we free ourselves from the endless cycle of comparison and envy. The ego thrives on better and worse, on chasing recognition and fearing rejection. But in truth, no victory over others can give us lasting peace. Real freedom has never been about winning in the outside world. It is born from understanding ourselves deeply and resting in the quiet center of our being. The Buddha often reminded us that liberation does not come from clinging to identity or from building a higher pedestal for the self. Instead, it arises from letting go of judgment, of comparison, of the endless need to prove. When we stop measuring our worth against someone else's life, we step into a space of openness, compassion, and genuine joy. This is where the heart finds rest. Imagine a life where you no longer feel the sting of envy when others succeed. Instead, you feel joy, because their happiness becomes part of your own. Imagine no longer fearing that you're not enough, because you've learned to see that your value is never in question. This is the gift of transcending ego, the discovery that the peace you've been seeking outside has always been quietly waiting within. As we walk this path, let us remind ourselves, true freedom doesn't mean erasing the self. It means not being enslaved by it. It means living with awareness, compassion, and gratitude. And when the ego whispers, "You are less than," or "You must prove yourself," we can simply smile, breathe, and return to the truth of who we really are, spacious, whole, and free. If today's reflection touched your heart, I warmly invite you to subscribe to this channel so we can continue walking together on this journey of awakening and freedom from ego. And as a way to anchor today's practice, I invite you to leave a simple comment. Namo Amitabha. Let it serve as a reminder, not of something outside you, but of the path back home to your own inner peace.